Okay. Um, so sometimes you buy those things that you think would be interesting and maybe playful, and then you start playing with it and you're like, what have I gotten myself into? So that's kind of what we have today. So today we're looking at the HP Pavilion Wave 600, which, if we turn it on its side, it's a pretty big guy. Um, I don't know if I would even call it a mini PC, but let's see, that's the sort of the top there, and there's the bottom. Let's go up a little bit. There's a better view, and here's kind of, relative to other things in terms of size-wise. But the neat thing about this guy is that it's all in one in terms of it's got a really neat speaker inside. Very, quite loud, quite booming. It does also have internal microphones. Mine, unfortunately, for some reason, stopped working. So I'm trying to figure out why that is. On the front, there is a place where you could plug in an external mic if you needed to, along with the USB. This unit is supposedly the predecessor, the follow-up to this guy, which is the HP, the Pavilion 300. And I mean, you can see the difference in size, and this has got like this nice material and so forth, very chic looking. I mean, this is kind of neat. It looks like a very large hockey puck, but yeah, it's definitely a. I don't know if I would really call this the the comparison, but anyway, this at least one document said that the 600 was the follow-up to the 300. So I wanted to do a video on this one because I've been tinkering so much with it, and I've gotten to the point where I just need to sort of move on. So I wanted to present the innards, kind of show some of the stuff about it, show that it's a nice, very cool unit. But if you're someone that's used to the more traditional mini PCs, the Elite desks, the Pro desks, this one, you thought those guys were tight as far as how they put all the components together. This one, I'm surprised that they even, that HP puts out a video showing you how to replace components. What I want to do today is I'm going to take out the mechanical hard drive that's in there, and I'm going to use this guy to take a normal SATA SSD, stick it in there, and then put it in the place, because this actually uses a 3.5-inch hard drive instead of the traditional 2.5 in the minis. This also uses the full-size memory sticks instead of the SODIMMs. This particular unit, when it was originally sold, was only 8 gig of memory, a single stick. The purchaser upgraded it to 2, and my understanding, paid someone to do it. This did come with a 1 terabyte SSD. This has an i3 6100T in it, which is a kind of a 2-core, 4-thread, 4 virtual machine type of setup. The memory runs at a 2133, and it's got a Realtek for its network. Now, one cool thing with this one too is that you could buy a unit, and I believe this one still could, but you could still upgrade it. But I haven't been able to find the actual parts, but it came with an actual GPU that went right there on the motherboard. And it was, it looks like it's an AMD Radeon R9. And yeah, it was an actual additional GPU that put it there. It had it heat sink, the whole thing, no kind of hacky stuff. But for our aftermarket, I haven't been able to find anything about it on, say on eBay. This would be in the same generation as your G2, G3, uses the LGA 1151 for the chip size. Conceivably, you could put in, an i7, probably a 7500T in this if you wanted to get the juice. This was primarily sold as, kind of a nice looking, computer that you could put on your desk and it looked more like furniture than, or a Wi-Fi, or not Wi-Fi, hi-fi system, as opposed to, the more, maybe an ugly, plastic box or something. So let's look at some of the features on this. Let's go on the back. Probably have to turn it on its side here. Power. This guy uses, thankfully, I got this at a very good price, and it included this beast. Look how large this thing is. It's 150 watt power supply. And what's interesting is I ran some tests on here, and even at full, full heavy load, it was only doing maybe 43 watts. So I thought, well, what if I hooked up a 65 watt power supply? Nope, would not even try to boot. You need this big guy in order for it to work. I'm pretty sure that I saw in the specs that if you get it with the GPU, then you need a 180 watt power supply for this to work. We've got the power, we've got HDMI, DisplayPort, network, 2 USB. This is a USB-C. This is an SD card reader, and of course the power supply, the power button. And mentioned before, you've got USB and then a headphone jack here. This one I did check, and the microphone does work here. So again, yeah, I'll show you when we open it up where everything is. Let's see, anything else on the bottom here? You've got kind of your traditional stuff as far as the name, serial number, model number. You can always look all this stuff up to see the specs on. Only came with a 1-year warranty. Obviously for the consumer market, this comes with an embedded license for Windows 10 Home. I was able to install Windows 11 Home without any problem. Just reads the embedded license. Some of them, and I don't know if it's a special version, but there is one of these that they were touting as being Amazon Alexa enabled. And so what that meant was that you could actually talk to this just like you would your little echoes and all that sort of stuff. And at least the picture I showed, it had like a blue light would come on, just similar like to the one sold by Amazon. And you could ask it questions to, play stuff and look stuff up and, the whole 9 yards. But I don't know if this one has anything like that. I don't see how the color would get there, but at least in the pictures I saw. So to open it up, we need to take off these sort of rubber, stoppers or something like that. What I found works the best is I got this spudger and just kind of get it into the crevice there, and then they just, kind of pop right off right there. Keep them to the side so you don't lose, obviously. And you can mix and match these. There's no, they're not from a specific position. And then we've got our Phillips. Once we have those three out, we can kind of lift it up. And there you got the innards. So with the triangular shape, everything is, kind of around there. The first step we need to do is we got to take out this outside chassis. The hard drive is right here, and if you can tell from here, it is it's the larger 3.5 inch. But to get there, we got to take this off. Now, when you're taking this off, you've got to detach a couple things. This is where the speakers, I shouldn't say not the speakers, the microphones are, and these are the elusive ones that have been working for me. Pull that up. Right here, this is the other side of that I/O board on the front. We've got a couple things we need to detach from it. We want to take off this. And this one that's covered, you don't want to pull up, you want to go out. And the reason being, let's see if that focuses, but there's just a little connector. I'm sure there's a name for these, but they do sort of snap in to the connector there. So that's to the side. That's to the side. One fun thing, and I'll show you as we're doing this, as I was working and going inside a couple times, this particular cable here that goes down underneath, and you'll see we're going to disconnect it from this I/O board. I tried so many times, I ended up somehow bending one of the pins on the unit, and to the point where if I put in power and hit the power button, the light would come on and wouldn't do anything. So I had to go, I got to, use the camera and figure out exactly what got bent and so forth. So be very careful with this particular connector at both ends, and it will have a tendency to disconnect. So now we've got those, so we want to raise this up far enough that now we can detach this cable. And we may go a little bit higher. And this is kind of where probably ended up doing a lot of the bending. Okay, there we go. All right. Now we can just take it the rest of the way. Okay, I've got the outer chassis off. I just kind of wanted to show you what you're left with. This is that I/O board on the other side of here. These are the two microphones, and that's where it kind of connects in. If anyone out there has had any issues, have this unit, and any tricks on getting these microphones to work, it's hard to know if it's even being detected. So, but here's the I/O, and what I ended up having to do before was there's two tabs. One of course, is now broken, that you have to push on here in order to lift this up. So it was a lot easier. Then I could actually get in and look at this connector here to figure out what was bent. Let's put that to the side. Okay, let's look at our... Okay. So let me show you a couple things. And these units are definitely for the hobbyist that is not afraid to take apart a lot of things in order to get to the stuff they need. And I'm not going to go as much of a breakdown as I do in my normal videos because I'm worried about being able to get everything back together again. So, a couple things just to point out. We talked about the hard drive. This right here is the motherboard. The motherboard supports a Wi-Fi card, M.2. Conceivably, you could undo this screw and try to get this guy out. This card in here, I believe, is supposed to support AC, so it's pretty fast already, and it would be pretty, I don't know, I don't think you'd be able to do the stuff where you do the adapter to make this another hard drive. It does support a 2280 M.2, but it's on the underside of this motherboard, which means in order to add SSD, you've got to take all this apart, take the motherboard out, stick it on the bottom, put everything back together, and really, really hope and pray that everything's going to work. So, yeah, it's a challenge. What we're going to do, oh, and let's see, a couple other things. Memory. Memory is found right here. What we want to do is we want to remove these two screws here in order to get to that heat shield. Or, excuse me, to remove the shield so that we can get to the memory. All right, and there you see your memory. And you just put in your, most likely it will just have, maybe one put in, populated so you could put in the other. So let's stick it back on. Let's see on the side. The challenge with a lot of this is that you're doing a lot of stuff vertical here. I mean, I guess you could kind of lay some of the stuff down and work on it because it is, there are flat surfaces. Now, you may have noticed and wondered, well, what is this thing? That looks like a USB. Yes, it is. It's a USB with a dongle. Now, this dongle is designed, they would sell these units with a wireless keyboard and mouse. And this particular transmitter was already set for those, that HP combo. And so it was internal. That way you don't have to use up a port for that, and it's all built in. I was curious to know, could I put a USB drive on here? Yes, I could. The problem, though, is that it's only 2.0. So when I tested the same USB drive on the front, I got, I'm speed of 100, whatever the numbers were. And then when I tested it here, it was only a third. Because originally, my hope or thought was that I could put in 2 SSDs here, because they sell these little adapters that in the same space where you would normally put a 3.5, you can put 2.5-inch SSDs, and so I'd have one that would be running off of an adapter that goes, they have these adapters that will do both the power and the data for SATA. So I was going to stick it in into the dongle, maybe run it over, maybe disconnect the cable here, because it's just kind of like a zip tie here, and run it off of that. But the speed would have been so abysmal that it really wasn't worth it. So I just went with the single that will replace here. The giant speaker is pretty much underneath this guy, along with, oh, I think there's a fan. It's kind of, oh yeah, there's a fan down. I probably can't see it on the video, but there is a fan down there. It's nothing. I saw some video on it, and it's pretty much the same as what you'd find inside of a Elite Desk. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take out this guy and replace it with the adapter. So what we're first going to do is just disconnect the power and data. I found too, you want to take this little thing here, just kind of slide it, so just kind of get it out of the way. There are 4 screws here. And they have these little tabs that are supposed to just rest inside of course, just dropped one on the floor, but just rest inside of that little, those little first I thought they kind of like supposed to kind of snap in there or something, but now they just pretty much just sit there. Okay, now what I find helped in order to get it out was I kind of stuck my finger down here in this little hole, and that allowed me to kind of push it up so I could get it. These 3.5 inch are definitely heavier. There we go. And there's our Toshiba 1 terabyte, July 2016. It's still working. I'll add it to my collection of 1 terabyte 3.5 inch, but it's just, you know, it's slow. So I really want to go with the SSD. I'm going to use the SSD that came in my ill-fated HP Elite Slice. So let me get that, and let me get that adapter. Okay, got this off of Amazon, this Orico. This is not metal. This is plastic. But I liked it because I was almost going to use one that you could put the two in, but I figured, well, let's just go with the straight single one. And this is kind of neat because you stick it in here, so it's being held in nicely here, and then you just stick the whole thing in, and then you attach to here. And it seemed to get some good reviews. So we'll pop that in there. Let's make sure we're putting it in the right way. Yep. Yeah, okay. It snaps in, so it's a nice and flush. And we can put in some screws too. Oh, nice. They divide up. They divide up the types. So and there we have. Now, we want to stick this back in. We need to put it in this way so that it can screw into the back to stabilize it there. Now we just need to get the screws in. Start with these. And you do have to kind of keep your finger there to hold it up. Otherwise, it's not flush enough for the screws to go in. But I would say once you do it diagonal, and then you can fit it in. Oop. All right. Let's reconnect. Go. Oh, and also put this over. First, I thought this was maybe like a light, but I think it's a temp sensor, because there's actually is an activity light on the motherboard already when it's doing stuff. So, and if you are interested in going, diving deeper into this, I'll include a link to the HP video that shows the pain involved in getting all the way down to the motherboard and putting on the backside if you want to put in an M.2. I'm pretty sure in their video they even have you take the CPU and heatsink out, but that's pretty hardcore. Let's put our chassis back on. When you're putting the chassis back on, you want to make sure, try to keep these the wires sort of you're going to reconnect, probably put them somewhat toward the middle, so that way when you're putting the outside back on, they're not getting caught on anything. Okay, it's really hard sometimes getting this guy. Okay, so we're just, so I'm already getting some of my wires wanting to break free. Okay, so and you thought putting the G3 case on every time with that latch was a pain. Yeah, work on this a couple times and you'll you'll welcome it. Okay, so I'm bringing it down, and when I get close enough, let's move this down a bit. When I get close enough, the first thing I want to do is I want to attach this. And okay, if you have difficulty, it's probably best to just take the chassis back off. Then you can get to this connector and then just kind of pull it up a little bit, so it's kind of, that way you can have better control and it doesn't fall in there. So I'm just going to kind of leave this up, and then I'll try putting the chassis. All right, nothing's, okay, it's coming down. That to the side. Now, we got all this nice room. Let's stick the connector. Okay, now, one thing, I'm going to put it to the side. If for some reason you forget which direction, the one that, on this connector, the one that's missing wires at the top, that's the one you want to have at the top. Okay, so now we can keep going. We can attach this. Keep going a little more. Before you get too far down, you want to put the speaker, the microphone connector. That's right here. Because if you try to put the connector in when it's all the way down, it starts getting blocked. Okay, now we can lower more. And then the last one is this little connector, which you see here, we want it to go on the silver, the gold there. Okay, and you'll hear almost like a, I don't know, snap or as it gets into place there nicely. Then put your wires down in, because we're going to be putting the top back on. And get that out, all that stuff out of the way. And let's put this back on. Put this on. And with these rubber, they kind of look, you know, symmetrical, but I don't know, it seemed like, let's see on the side. No, I guess there's a slight difference. There's an indent. So you can experiment and see when you're sticking them in. If one way doesn't seem to grab, try the other direction. All right, I'm going to do power, and I'm going to go ahead and install Windows 11, and then we'll come back and we'll do some checks for you know, power and thermals, all that sort of stuff. Well, we're booted into Windows 11 Home, and boy, it's definitely faster with the SSD versus the mechanical. It just, you know, from pushing the start button to being in Windows is, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds. It's pretty fast. So temps are looking pretty good. I mean, I've been turning this on and off, and I mean, we're right now in the low 30s, really. Power drain, or I should say power usage, is very low. At idle, we're looking at maybe 10 watts. Which is less than you would see on some of those on the Elite desks. So let's try running heavy load and see what we get for temps and overall power usage. So as usual, we'll start it up, run it for 5, and see what the temps look like as we're running it, and also the power. All right, coming up on the 5-minute mark. Pretty nice on the temperature, pretty impressed. Only, you know, max of 55. Power was only around 42 watts. I may have mentioned it earlier, just funny for such a giant 150 watt power supply that it's only drawing 42. And yet it, you know, still needs that 150. I was kind of curious to see if it would work with the 90 watt, but I have a feeling if it's doesn't like the 65, it's probably not going to like the 90 watt. Let's stop it and see how quickly it kind of gets back to normal here. Power went down to 10 watts almost immediately when you know, we got rid of the heavy load. And you can see the temps coming down pretty quickly. You know, I don't know, something to do with that triangular design, or just a really good fan or something, but definitely. And these do look even better than when I had the mechanical drive, which kind of makes sense. You know, every little thing's going to put off more heat. So this is a nice looking unit here. So I ran Geekbench against the Wave here, and this is kind of where you see, if I sort by single core, looks like it's just around similar to what you'd see on a G3, and maybe even a G2 almost neck and neck. If I sort by multi-core, we have it right here. It's a little better than a G1, but not as good as a 4590T G1. So not the greatest when it comes to the multi-core. They do sell these with, obviously bigger processors. You can put, i7s in these and such. So then the question is, would I recommend this particular unit for those interested in, hand-me-down tech? I think it's pretty nice. I was impressed as far as, it's definitely the aesthetics. It's a very cool looking, the sort of the charcoal brown, the fabric kind of feel, the whole thing. It is very nice. I'm impressed with the temperatures and the power usage, but I'm not so wild about the expandability, and maybe not necessarily that you can't expand. It's just that getting down into the opening this thing up, getting to the stuff you need to, that's a lot. Granted, I guess if you were going to put in, let's say, an M.2 drive, maybe we just do it once. But for me, I just like to experiment and, move parts from here to there and not have to, do a lot of extra effort in order to do that. And with this, you're really taking everything apart. I'm wondering, just the simple fact of me opening it up, was that enough to maybe stop the microphones from working? I don't know. I should have probably tested those before I did anything to it. I just didn't even realize that it had internal microphones. I guess that's a little bit of something that's a craw on my side, because spending so much time trying to get that to work. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of units that I could see for sale. I got this on an auction. I did very well as far as price-wise on it. But a lot of the ones I'm seeing are, like, I don't know, 125, 150. That's a lot to spend for something that is kind of more of a novelty type of item. Keep your eyes open. I also see a lot that say they're parts only, or you don't get the power supply, and that power supply, sometimes I've seen it running $40, $50 just for the power supply. So it just gets kind of pricey for everything else. So keep your eye open. If you see it for a lower price, especially if maybe you get the one that has a built-in GPU, that might be nice to use. Let me know in the comments for those that have the unit, and what you're using it for.